It being the conspiracy surrounding his old dancing buddy, Jeffrey Epstein. There you go. For years, before he was, reelected, and recently, since they all got into office, a bunch of high-ranking people in Trump's administration.
The studio lights were already low when Stephen Colbert walked to his desk, but something about the room felt different before he said a single word. The crowd was ready to laugh. They had come for jokes, for sharp lines, for the familiar rhythm of late-night politics. But Colbert did not rush into a punchline. He stood there for a moment, holding one thin folder in his hand, and looked straight into the camera as if the joke had already ended before the show even began. The story being told on screen was simple, but heavy. For days, Donald Trump had tried to treat the Epstein questions like old news, like a tired subject that only his enemies wanted to keep alive. The clips showed him brushing it away, mocking the concern, acting as if repetition could make the public stop asking. But Colbert did not answer noise with noise. He sat down slowly, placed the folder on the desk, and said, "Tonight, we are not going to start with what he wants to say. We are going to start with what he wants people to forget." The room changed. There was a little laughter at first, but it faded quickly. The audience could feel that this was not just another monologue. This was something colder, quieter, and more dangerous for a man who depends on volume.
In fact, yesterday, he said he was surprised anyone even cares about the guy.
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life.
That sentence was never a big factor in terms of word.
Colbert's team rolled a short series of clips. Trump sounded confident in each one, calling the questions boring, dismissing the subject, acting as though the very mention of Epstein was beneath serious people. Then the screen went black, and Colbert waited. He did not smile. He did not shout. He simply leaned forward and said, "When a powerful man tells you a question is too boring to ask, that is usually the moment you should ask it twice." That line landed hard, not like a joke, like a door closing. Then came the first turn. Colbert reminded viewers that the segment was not claiming to solve a mystery in one night. It was examining the way the story was being handled, the way the question itself seemed to change the air around Trump. The claim being discussed was not just about names or old photographs. It was about reaction, about memory, about what happens when public records, public images, and public questions refuse to disappear just because a politician says they should. On the giant screen behind him, the show displayed old public images and archived moments that had been part of public conversation for years.
Details this morning about documents missing from the Epstein files, including interviews with a woman who leveled accusations against Donald Trump. More than 50 pages of documents related to the allegation are missing from.
Trump and Epstein appeared in the same social spaces, the same public circles, the same kind of old footage that political figures often wish would stay buried under newer headlines. Colbert did not overstate it. He pointed at the screen and said, "This does not prove everything people want to claim, but it does raise one very simple question. Why does he act like the question itself is the threat?" The audience went still. That was the power of the moment. Colbert was not swinging wildly. He was narrowing the frame. He showed the pattern as the segment framed it. First comes denial, then comes mockery, then comes the attack on the person asking, then comes the demand that everybody move on before the public has enough time to think. Colbert called it a familiar performance in American politics. Flood the room, fog the timeline, insult the questioner, and hope regular people get too tired to keep track. This time, nobody laughed. Then Colbert played the contrast. In other clips, Trump looked loose, loud, in control. He mocked opponents. He waved off criticism. He played to the crowd like a man who believed every room belonged to him. But when the Epstein name entered the conversation, the segment suggested the rhythm changed. The grin tightened. The answer turned sharper. The confidence seemed to bend into irritation. Colbert froze the image and tapped the desk once. "There," he said. "That is not a man bored by a question. That is a man angry that the question survived." A gasp moved through the audience before the applause came. It was not wild applause. It was heavy, unsettled applause, the kind that comes when people feel something they suspected has just been laid out in plain English. Colbert let it pass. He knew the silence after the applause mattered more than the applause itself. Then he lowered his voice. "The real issue here," he said, "is not whether a late-night host can embarrass a former president. The real issue is whether power still has to answer questions when those questions are uncomfortable." That sentence struck directly at the older viewers watching at home.
Epstein saga is a total snooze fest. I mean, the most powerful man in the world is blocking information about a cabal of the rich, the famous, and the royal, befriending a con man who regularly flies off in his private plane to his private island to do super illegal sex stuff. Then the con man is arrested. People are afraid he's going to name names, but before he can, he mysteriously dies right after being taken off a suicide watch in a federal prison during the administration of the guy who is blocking the release of the information.
People who remember when public trust meant something, when leadership was expected to carry dignity, when a man standing before the country was supposed to answer clearly, not bury every hard question under insult and performance. Colbert did not need to say it loudly. The contrast was already there. One side had noise. The other side had a folder, a screen, and a question that would not go away. And then came the line that turned the entire segment into something bigger than politics. Colbert looked into the camera and said, "There are some shadows that even the loudest man in the room cannot outshout." The studio froze for a beat, not because the line was complicated, because it was clear, because it reached past party, past spin, past the nightly shouting match, and touched something deeper. In America, people may disagree about policy. They may argue about elections. They may choose different sides, but most people still understand the difference between answering a question and trying to make the question disappear. By the end, Colbert had not pounded the desk. He had not claimed to reveal every hidden truth. He had done something more damaging to the performance. He slowed it down. He took the laughter out of the room long enough for people to see the shape of the dodge. And once they saw it, the old tricks did not look quite as strong. The cameras kept rolling, but the room had already changed. What began as a late-night segment became a reminder that public memory is not as weak as powerful men hope it is. Insults can fill a room. Anger can dominate a headline. But one calm question, asked at the right moment, can cut through all of it. And when the noise finally fades, truth does not need to shout. It only needs to remain standing.